Good morning. My name is Lubna Abdaltawab Yusuf, and I am coming to you again today with a lecture on reading and writing and the coronavirus pandemic, al-waba. This is lecture 2 to continue what we started in lecture 1, and that is, in order to write well, you need to read. In order to write well, you need to have something different to say to add to what you have already read. Now, in the previous lecture, we said that when we write, we deal with controversial issues, meaning issues that involve difference in opinion. And in order to write, you have to read what other writers have written, what other writers have said, and you have to figure out whether you agree with some aspects of what they said or disagree, and you tell your reader how and why. Now, with the coronavirus, as we said in lecture 1, there are a lot of theories, and we do not want to become tense or to get worried about these theories because they are only theories, nazariyat, meaning they can be correct and they can be wrong. And therefore, there's no need to worry about these theories. What we need to worry about is to take care of ourselves and to take care of the people we love. Now, we're going to move on to the next slide to revise what we did in lecture 1 and to move on to lecture 2. Now, we said that when we write, we have to have a point of view. In order to support this point of view, we are going to define our terms. هنعمل تعريف للمصطلحات. We're going to think of the term we are discussing, and we're going to compare it and contrast it with other terms. So the coronavirus, for example, requires a definition. Pandemic requires a definition, which is what we did in lecture 1. But then it also requires that we compare between the coronavirus and other viruses, between the coronavirus and the influenza virus, for example, the coronavirus and whether it is similar to pneumonia or different from pneumonia. Now, a third way of proving our point is by using cause and effect. And this is what the writer, Christy Brewer, did. She uses cause and effect in number 3 because they tell us on the news all the time, you have to wash your hand, you have to wash your hand, you have to wash your hand. Now, some people can become obsessed with the idea of washing their hands, and it can make them tense, and this is not healthy. So psychologically, you need to remain healthy. So if you constantly become obsessed with the idea of washing your hands, this can become unhealthy. Now, a third way is classification. You can classify the different diseases, you can classify the different ways of curing sick patients. Another way of proving your point to convince the reader is through process, meaning if someone gets sick, what does the person do? What are the steps? The first step is to get in touch with the authorities who can take a test علشان نعمل التحليل مثلا، علشان نشوف المشاكل الصحية اللي عندنا مماثلة لأعراض الكورونا ولا لأ. لو كانت مماثلة يبقى لازم نتصل بالسلطات المسؤولة إنها تساعدنا عشان نعمل التحليل، علشان لو كان بوزيتيف لازم ناخد أدوية، لازم نشوف هنروح مستشفى ولا نقدر نتعالج في البيت. ففي خطوات. There is a process, steps. Now, another way of convincing your reader is to tell a story. And this is what Christy Brewer did in her first point in supporting her argument. Limit the news and be careful what you read. So if you listen to the news a lot and the news makes you tense, this is not healthy for you psychologically. Now, the second reason Christy Brewer gave is by using a description. She says, have breaks from social media and mute things which are triggering. And she gives us a description of someone who became very tense, very worried from the social media. So if you get worried from the social media, do not open Facebook or Twitter, and relax and stay calm. Now, I am introducing you to all these points because I would like you, when you read or write or listen to the news, I would like you to try to figure out what the newsreader or what the writer is using to support his or her argument. Now, when you train yourself to do that, you will be able to train yourself to do that when you write. So, for example, if you're listening to the news and the piece of news compares the coronavirus in Egypt and in Italy, all right? Or when the news introduces the process of recovery. This will help you when you write to use any of these modes. These are called modes. To use any of these modes in order to prove your point. Now, we are going to continue with Christy Brewer because she has two more ways to help us to protect our mental health, our psychological condition. And this is in the following slide. Now, Kirsty Brewer says there is a process in order to be psychologically healthy. And her suggestion is stay connected with people. In our conditions, when we have to stay at home, it doesn't mean that you sit at home alone and you don't talk to anybody, because this is not good for you. You want to talk to your family, to the members of um, uh, your family, your brothers, your cousins, you can talk to your neighbors. And now you can do that in very many ways. You can do that by using the telephone, by using the mobile, by using the internet. So it's a good idea when you are staying at home to stay connected with people. Now, why does that involve a process? Because you need to find out how you will be connected with them. So, for example, if you have a relative who is in Saudi Arabia, if you have a relative in another country, if you have a relative in another city in Egypt, if you live in Cairo and you have a relative in Alexandria, you need to figure out, are you going to talk to them through the internet or through the mobile? You're going to find out what is more convenient, more appropriate for you and for them. All right, now let's go back to the slide and let's see what Christy Brewer says. She says, staying in touch with those you care about will help you to maintain good mental health during long periods of self-isolation. Now, we need to look at the word self-isolation. Is it only self-isolation? Is it you who are isolating yourself? Or is it the condition of the pandemic that leads you to isolate yourself? Now, what am I doing now? I am looking critically at what we are reading. So she says it is self-isolation. Now, it is true that the person is isolating himself. So, for example, I am isolating myself at home, and unfortunately, I can't come to university to meet you. But this isolation, although it is self-isolation, it is isolation also by the governments of the world, because all the governments of the world discovered that it is better for us to stay at home because the disease is infectious. المرض معدي، ولذلك من الأفضل إن الواحد يفضل في البيت علشان ما يتعديش، أو لو عشان هو عيان ما يعديش حد. ولأنه ممكن الناس اللي يعديهم دول يبقوا أضعف منه، فالشخص يخف لكن الناس اللي عداهم ما يخفوش. So it is a good idea to physically isolate yourself, but to communicate with people through the internet, through the telephone, through the mobile, and also through watching television, seeing what is happening in the world. Now, Christy Brewer has a quotation by someone called Weatherly. And Weatherly says, agree regular check-in times and feel connected to the people around you. Now, what does that mean? Agree regular check-in times. Now, I have a group of friends, and it was one of our birthdays. One of our friends had her birthday yesterday. So, what did we do? We agreed to talk at 11 o'clock. We are a group of 5 friends, and we created a group on Messenger, and we agreed to talk at 11 o'clock yesterday. And it was wonderful because we wished our friend a happy birthday, and we sang to her, and she was very happy that we remembered and we showed our love for her. So what did we do? We agreed to check in at a specific time, and that was yesterday. Now, we also agreed to check in again after 1 week. So after 1 week, we're going to talk again so that we stay in touch regularly. Now, let's go to Christy Brewer. So I am using Christy Brewer, and I am giving you examples from my own life. I would like you to do the same thing. I would like you to write and use what someone says, and then give the reader examples from your own life. Now, what does Christy Brewer add? She says, strike a balance between having a routine and making sure each day has some variety. Now, I think this is an excellent idea because, for example, in Ramadan, we have to have a routine, meaning we have to eat before sunrise, and we have to fast from sunrise to sunset. So we have a routine that is wonderful, and within this routine, we can still do whatever we want. So let me give you an example. I am talking to you now, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So I am talking to you at a time when I have energy, when I am mentally alert, when I am not tired, when I am not really very hungry, all right? So that I can give you a lecture that you can understand and possibly learn something from it. Now, after I finish, I will take a rest and maybe watch television, maybe read the Quran, maybe pray. It depends on how I decide to structure my day after I have finished my work. So during the day, there is variety, all right? I don't sit and read all the time, or I don't sleep all the time, or I don't work all the time, or I don't watch television all the time, all right? I do a variety of activities that keep me active, but at the same time, if I get tired because I am hungry, I need to rest. Now, let's go back to the slide. Christy Brewer says, for some people, it might end up actually feeling like quite a productive or restful period. Now, this is the case with me. It is a very productive period because, as you can see, I prepared the slides for you before I did the recording. I never taught online before, so this is a good experience for me. So I learned something new, and at the same time, I am doing something useful because I am also teaching you something new. And the other important issue is that I do not have to go out and take transport and get stuck in the traffic. So the tension of what is happening in the street is less. Now let's go back to the slide. Christy Brewer says you could work through your to-do list or read a book you'd been meaning to get to. Now, this is a good example of something that she is suggesting. Now, if you wanted to read a book that you didn't have the time to read in the past because you were busy, you had to go to work, you were busy, you had to go out, now you are staying at home, so you have more time. Now, we can have a lot of other suggestions. For example, if I wanted to cook something and what I wanted to cook takes a lot of time, in the past, I didn't have the time to stay at home to cook this meal, but now I have plenty of time at home. Or I can watch a program on television, and there are many programs on television that show you how to cook very nice and delicious meals. So you can write the recipe down and then you can try it. Now, another very useful activity is to exercise. Again, on the television and on the internet, a lot of people who are interested in physical health, they show us how to exercise in order to remain physically healthy. So it is not only, as Christy Brewer suggests, to read a book, but there are a lot of other activities that you can do other than that. Now, let's move on to the following slide. And in this slide, Christy Brewer supports her argument using cause and effect. Now, what does she say? She says, with weeks and months of the coronavirus pandemic ahead, it is important to have downtime. Now, nobody knows for how long this problem will last. And so this is why we have to find different ways of remaining psychologically healthy. So what she is suggesting is that we have downtime. What does downtime mean? It means time when we rest, time when we relax. We don't have to be working all the time. We don't have to be watching television all the time. We don't have to be talking on the phone all the time. We don't have to be communicating or cleaning or cooking all the time. We need downtime, which is time to rest. Now, we also need time for fresh air, for sunlight. So, go out in the balcony, open the windows. Now, she is suggesting that we have to exercise, we have to eat well, and we have to stay hydrated. What does stay hydrated mean? It means we have to drink a lot of water. So, these are physical activities, but they are physical activities that keep your mind healthy. Now, what does she also suggest? Now, Christy Brewer, we said in the previous lecture, works for the BBC, and the BBC is in Britain, in England, in the UK. So she tells us that in the UK there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension. Many people are getting sick, many people are dying, many people are very unhappy because of the isolation. Now, what is Christy Brewer suggesting? She is suggesting what is known as practicing the Apple technique to deal with anxiety and worries. Okay, so if you're worried, she discovered that there is a technique that is called the Apple technique. Now, the word apple is made up of 5 letters: A, P, P, L, E. So the Apple technique has 5 steps. One step starts with the A, another step starts with the P, a third step starts with another P, a fourth step starts with an L, and a fifth step starts with the E. Now, let's go through the steps of the Apple technique with Christy Brewer. And of course, as soon as we talk about steps, we're talking about a process. So here we have a process, but we also have a definition of a technique, the Apple technique. And we all know what an apple is, all right? But here the word apple is used in a different way. And we're going to see how. Now, the first letter is the letter A, apple. And she uses the letter A for her first step. And her first step is acknowledge. What does acknowledge mean? She explains it and says, notice and acknowledge the uncertainty as it comes to mind. Now, what does that mean? In step number 5, she says, with weeks and months of the coronavirus pandemic ahead, it is important to have downtime. الكلام ده معناه إن إحنا بقالنا أسابيع والله أعلم هنقعد أسابيع كمان ولا شهور ولا قد إيه. وبالتالي إحنا ما عندناش علم بنهاية الوباء ده إمتى. فلازم نعترف ويبقى عندنا knowledge acknowledge وننوتس، نلفت أنظار نفسنا والآخرين إنه إحنا لا نعلم نهاية الموضوع ده إمتى، وبالتالي نتوكل على الله. وبالتالي هي طبعا مش بتقول نتوكل على الله، لكن إحنا بنستفيد من كلامها ونطبقه على ثقافتنا علشان نستفيد منه استفادة 100%. فنقول لنفسنا ونطبطب على نفسنا ونقول لبعض احنا مش عارفين نهاية المدة دي امتى، فنهدى لغاية ما ربنا يقضي أمرا. Alright? So we acknowledge and we notice that the uncertainty should not make us tense. بمعنى مش لازم نبقى قلقانين، لأن احنا الحمد لله في بيوتنا وبصحتنا ومع حبايبنا، ونحافظ على نفسنا ونحافظ عليهم لغاية ما المأساة دي تنتهي. Okay, so this is number 1, acknowledge. Number 2, P, apple, P, pause. عارفين لما نحط الجهاز على pause، لما نوقف الأغنية اللي بتشتغل وندوس على pause. ليه؟ بندوس على pause عشان نعمل حاجة تانية ونرجع. بندوس على pause عشان نهدى. فهي بتقول إيه بقى؟ pause. Don't react as you normally do. نهدى كده، ولازم نعرف إن إحنا ما ينفعش يبقى الرياكشنز بتاعتنا، ردود الفعل بتاعتنا، ردود فعل عادية زي ما بنعمل في أيامنا العادية. لازم نهدى ونعرف إن إحنا في أيام غير عادية، في مشاكل غير عادية، وبالتالي we have to pause and we don't react at all. ساعات نبقى غضبانين. We sometimes become angry. We tell ourselves pause. Pause and breathe. نتنفس ونفكر إن إحنا محتاجين نهدى. Now, pause is the first P. Pull back is the second P. Now, she says, pull back. Tell yourself this is just the worry talking. بمعنى لما نقلق نكلم نفسنا ونقول لنفسنا نهدى، علشان التوتر مش هيجيب نتيجة. Worrying will not have a positive effect. So when she explains pull back, she says, tell yourself this is just the worry talking. نكلم نفسنا ونقول لا، نهدي عقلنا كده وبلاش القلق. Don't believe everything you think. العالم هيتدمر واحنا هنبقى عندنا مشاكل. لا. Do not have this attitude. Relax and think that when you face problems in the future, you will solve these problems. Now, back to the word apple. A-P-P-L-E. Now L. Let go. Let go, and she explains it. Let go of the thought or the feeling. Meaning, if you have a bad thought or if you have a bad feeling, let go. Tell yourself it will pass. Tell yourself that this is a problem, and like all the problems in the world, this problem will come to an end. Now, the last point, the letter E of the word apple, of the apple technique, is explore. Now, we are self-isolated, we are at home, but we can explore. Now, she tells us explore the present moment, because right now, in this moment, all is well. Now, you are sitting at home, listening to a lecture, and you are safe, you are healthy, you are fine. So at present, you are all right. So explore this moment. Explore moments when you were not all right and the time passed and you became all right. طيب يعني ايه؟ احنا عايزين ننفذ الكلام ده على العملية التعليمية اللي احنا بنعملها في المحاضرة دي. احنا في النهاية عايزين نقرأ علشان نتعلم نكتب أحسن. طيب علشان نتعلم نكتب أحسن احنا بنستفيد من اللي كتبوا غيرنا. طيب هي بتقول explore the present moment، يعني نفكر في المشكلة اللي احنا فيها ونفكر ان احنا الحمد لله كويسين، وبعدين نفكر في مشكلة حصلت في الماضي وانتهت على خير وتعلمنا منها، ونكتب التجربة دي علشان لما نكتب تجربة اتعلمنا منها وتجربة ناجحة تخلينا في حالة نفسية أحسن. فنستفيد من كلام كريستي ونطبقه على حياتنا ونطبقه على العملية التعليمية اللي احنا فيها. Now let's move to what Christy says again. Explore. Explore the present moment, because right now, in this moment, all is well. Notice your breathing and the sensations of your breathing. Look around and notice what you see, what you hear, what you can touch, what you can smell. Now, all these are physical activities. But these physical activities can lead you to better mental health. So, when you tell yourself, الحمد لله أنا قادر أسمع، الحمد لله أنا قادر أشوف، الحمد لله أنا قادر أستنشق هواء نظيف. وحاجة من الحاجات اللي الناس كتير قوي بتبحث فيها وبتكتب عنها إنه الكرة الأرضية كانت في خطر من كتر التلوث. الفترة دي التلوث في الكرة الأرضية اتحسن جدا، فرب ضارة نافعة. So we can explore what we want to do in the future, how we want to learn from this experience, and how we want to make use of what we learned in the future. So we are going to learn from Christy Brewer, and we are going to learn from the coronavirus experience what we have never learned before, because we are all, as human beings on the earth, we are all in the same boat. يعني كلنا اكتشفنا إننا في مركب واحدة. كلنا اكتشفنا إن إحنا ممكن نضر بعض وممكن نضر نفسنا. And it is a good idea that we learn from this experience what the world is learning from it. So stay safe, take care of yourself, write about this experience so that in the future you can remember what you learned from this experience. Okay, God bless you. Stay safe.